You have been in hell today. Not metaphorically, not in the bad day sense. In a specific state of mind, the Buddha gave a specific name to 25 centuries ago. You were also in paradise, briefly, this afternoon. You were in the realm of hungry ghosts last night, at 11, scrolling something you did not even want. 6 realms. 6 distinct worlds your mind enters and exits in a single day, without telling you, without asking you, without even showing you the door. They are not places you go after you die. They are the places you already live. And the reason your life keeps repeating itself, the same mood, the same exhaustion, the same argument circling back, is that you have been walking these 6 rooms in the same order for years, never seeing the door that opens out of all of them. Over the next 3 hours, that door becomes visible. You will recognize every room as it arrives. You will see which one has been costing you the most. And you will learn precisely how the wheel finally stops. Let your shoulders drop. Let the breath slow. You are welcome here. Let yourself arrive. Think back to last Tuesday, or the Tuesday before, or the Tuesday before that. If you place them beside each other in your mind, something strange appears. The kitchen might have been a different kitchen. The people might have been different people. The thing on your screen might have been a different thing. But the mood is the same mood. The particular shape of your tiredness, the exact texture of the thought at 6 in the evening, the specific way your jaw sets before you open the fridge, those are identical. They have been identical for a long time. This is what you have been trying to name. You have spent a great deal of energy assuming this is your problem, that something is wrong with you, that with a better job, a better partner, a better morning routine, a better sleep tracker, a better meditation app, the loop would break. You have moved cities for this belief. You have ended relationships for this belief. You have started and abandoned more than one regimen for this belief. Some version of it has been guiding your decisions for years. It is not true. What you are experiencing is not a personal defect. It is what an unawake human mind does. Every unawake human mind. Everyone you have ever met, everyone you have ever admired, everyone who seems to have it figured out, all of them are inside the same mechanism. Some know it, most do not. Almost none of them can stop it just by trying harder. The cleverest people you know have tried. They have read the books. They have done the retreats. They have sat across from therapists who were very good at their job. Some of them now function beautifully inside the wandering. A functional life inside the wheel is still the wheel. Even ease, even competence, even gratitude. When they happen inside the wandering, they are the wandering in a different key. 25 centuries ago in northern India, a word arose for this exact mechanism. The word is samsara. It is often translated as reincarnation. That is not what it primarily means. It means wandering on. The wandering is not only between lifetimes, it is between states of mind. Moment to moment, hour to hour, year to year, the same mind producing the same states, because nothing has yet interrupted the production. You have been wandering on since breakfast. Here is the thing the wandering is very good at. It convinces you that it is you. The same argument at dinner feels like your personality. The tightness at 3 a.m. feels like your biography. The restlessness at 6 p.m. feels like your whole life. None of it is who you are. All of it is the wheel wearing your face. In a short discourse called the Tears Sutta, the Buddha once said something startling to his students. He said, "If you could count the tears you have cried across all your wandering, across all the countless forms this mind has taken, the tears from loss, from fear, from the sheer grief of not knowing how to be, those tears would fill the 4 great oceans." Not the rivers, the oceans. He did not choose that image because it sounded grand. He chose it because the ocean is what a mind produces when it has not yet seen itself clearly. Something vast, unknowable, moving constantly, almost impossible to stand inside of. You have been swimming in it. You have been swimming in it for longer than you can remember. Tonight the ocean is finally being given a name. It is meant to stop you. It is meant to make you set down whatever you were carrying when you heard it, and say, "This cannot be mine alone." And it is not. The wandering is the human inheritance. The tears are the price of a mind that does not yet see what it is doing. Notice the relief in that. If every human who has ever lived has been inside this, then your not knowing how to escape it is not a personal failure. It is the ordinary state of the unexamined mind. The real failure would be to believe, despite all of this, that you were supposed to have solved it on your own, alone, with willpower. In another discourse, the Buddha describes samsara as something that can be seen, not believed, not taken on faith. Seen, the way you see a pattern in a piece of cloth once it has been pointed out, and then cannot unsee it. Once the pattern is seen, the mind's relationship to it changes permanently. You have not left the cloth, but you know where the pattern is now. You know where the next stitch is coming. This is the whole promise of the next 3 hours. You will not be asked to believe anything. You will be shown a pattern. When you see it, you will recognize it. When you recognize it, something in your relationship to the pattern will shift. The shift happens on its own. Recognition does this without needing your effort. The pattern has 6 rooms. Not more, not fewer. 6 distinct states of mind that every human mind cycles through, often in a single day. We will walk through all 6 in the chapters ahead. Paradise, where wanting nothing feels like the whole problem. the realm of the ambitious, where winning becomes a kind of food. The realm that obeys without thinking, where routine swallows the hours whole. The realm that cannot stop wanting, where the wanting itself is the hunger. The realm that cannot stop hurting, where the pain seems to have no end. And the human realm, the strangest of the six, the rarest, the only one from which the door opens. All six are with you now. One of them is louder than the others, depending on the hour. Another has been quiet for a few days, but it will return. You will recognize every one of them as it arrives. Look at your attention for a moment, not with strain. Just notice where it has been in the last half hour. Was there a moment of wanting, a small craving, an itch to check something, an urge to eat something you were not hungry for? That was one realm. Was there a moment of mild pride, or slight superiority, or the small private satisfaction of noticing someone doing something less well than you would have? That was another. Was there a moment of fear, an email, a bill, a future sentence that tightened your chest before you even finished reading it? That was another. Was there a flat stretch where you did what was in front of you simply because it was in front of you, without choosing, without noticing you were doing it at all? That was another still. Was there a moment of quiet warmth, a brief feeling that everything was, for a few seconds, enough? That was another realm still. Notice what you just did. You moved through 5 distinct states of mind in about a minute, without knowing you were moving, without deciding, without noticing the transitions. This is the speed the wheel actually runs at, not the grand cosmology speed of lifetimes, the speed of a single afternoon. You have been wandering since you sat down, without telling yourself, without tracking any of it. That is the wheel. A wheel you cannot see is the hardest kind of wheel to be on. You experience every realm as simply how reality is, at the moment it is happening to you. When wanting is loud, the world is the wanting. When fear is loud, the world is the fear. When the day is flat and obedient, the flatness feels like the whole of what is true. A wheel you can see. You can step off. It takes time. The ability becomes available to you in a way it was not before. The step is not physical. It is attentional. You have already taken a small version of it tonight. The moment you read the first sentence of this chapter and thought, "Oh, I know this loop," the wheel became, briefly, something you could look at instead of something you were inside of. Most people never look. Most people live an entire life without once turning their attention back onto the wandering itself. You are already not doing that. This is what the 49 nights were for. A man sat beneath a tree until he had seen the full mechanism of the wheel. Every link, every engine, every spoke of the rim. What he found is not locked in any ancient language. It is available to any mind willing to look carefully at itself. The teaching that came out of those nights has been carried, in specific words, for 25 centuries. It has survived empires and translations, collapses of civilizations, the burning of monasteries, and the slow distortions that time does to everything precious. It survived because it works. It works the way a map of a real building works when you are lost inside that building. In the next chapter, you will sit with him for those nights. You will sit as someone who has also felt the weight of the wandering and wondered whether there was a way out. What he saw in the third watch of the final night did not require his lineage, his caste, his tradition, or his century. It only required a mind willing to stop running and look. You have that. You have arrived here with exactly that. There is. Imagine a particular evening, a long time ago. The season is late spring. The air is heavy with the kind of warmth that holds the smell of the river. A man in his middle 30s is sitting beneath a fig tree on the eastern bank of the Neranjara, in a place that will later be called Bodh Gaya. He has been seated since before sundown. He has decided, quietly, that he will not rise again until he has seen clearly what keeps the mind turning through its own suffering. He does not know how long it will take. He has not told anyone. His legs will fold under him for 49 nights. What he sees in those nights is not a vision. It is not a revelation from somewhere else. It is what the mind looks like when it finally stops running long enough to see itself work. The texts describe the awakening in 3 watches, 3 movements across a single culminating night. In the first watch of the night, he sees the long chain of his own wandering stretching backward through countless forms. In the second watch, he sees this chain operating in every life around him, the same mechanism, the same production, inside every mind. In the third watch of the night, just before dawn, he sees how the mechanism actually works. Here is what those first 2 watches did to him. They dissolved the last of his belief that any of this was personal. His own chain and every other mind's chain were made of the same material. Whatever he was about to see in the final watch, he knew it would be true for every human who has ever drawn breath. That is the seeing we are here for. The name the tradition gives to what he saw in the third watch is Paticca Samuppada. In English, it is usually translated as dependent origination or dependent co-arising. Both translations are accurate. Neither is the actual experience. The actual experience is closer to this: a sudden, complete, undeniable sight of the gears. The gears are always turning. They are turning inside you right now as you listen. But because they turn at the speed of your own attention, you cannot usually see them any more than a fish can see water. What he did that night was slow his attention down enough to see the water. Here is what he saw. He saw that every moment of suffering the mind produces has a structure, not a moral structure, not a cosmic punishment structure, a functional, mechanical, almost visible structure. like the linkage inside a clock. If one link goes missing, the next link does not arise. If the whole chain is interrupted at any point, the wheel loses its fuel for that moment. The tradition names 12 links in that chain. We will not walk through all 12 tonight. That is the work of another 3 hours, another lifetime, and another tradition's quiet study. We will walk through just enough of the chain to let you see the gears inside a moment of your own day. Begin with a notification on your phone. Your phone is face down on the table. It buzzes once. This is the first link in very ordinary form. Contact. A sense organ meets an object. In this case, your ear meets a small vibration. Contact has occurred. Before you can think about it, something happens inside you. Something is already leaning toward the phone, not consciously. The leaning is happening at a speed below thought. This is the next link. Feeling tone. The mind has labeled the buzz instantly as pleasant, potentially interesting, potentially significant, potentially something worth turning toward. Notice, no one decided this. The feeling tone arose on its own, shaped by every previous time a buzzing phone produced something pleasant for this mind. Now watch the next link arise. Wanting. A small, sharp, almost imperceptible wanting to look. The Pali word for this is tanha, craving, thirst. It is the engine of the whole chain. The buzz has become a small thirst. You are not yet holding the phone. The thirst is already formed. And then clinging. The thirst grasps. The mind has picked the phone up in imagination already. Whatever you were doing a second ago has become less real than the phone. The clinging is so fast you do not feel it as a separate event. It feels like just wanting to check. Next, becoming. A version of you has formed, briefly, around the phone. The person who checks. The identity that says, without words, this is the kind of person I am right now, and this is what I do. Finally, birth, and then aging and death. That may sound grand for a phone, but it is precise. A state of mind was born. The checking person pulled into the phone's small world. That state will age. It will decay. It will end when the screen locks again, and another little death of that self will occur. A new link in a new chain will begin the moment after. Count how long that took. 8 links, from buzz to a small dying of the checking self, in somewhere between 4 and 12 seconds. And before the next breath has fully arrived, the whole chain has begun again. Another buzz, another pleasant tone, another small thirst, another checking self, briefly born, briefly ended. That is one turn of the wheel. You do this thousands of times a day, with phones, with thoughts, with moods, with passing expressions on the faces of the people you love. Every one of those turns is a full chain. Every one produces a tiny version of suffering, even when the buzz was good news. Because every turn ends. Every version of the checking self has to die, and the next turn has to start without it. This is what the Buddha saw in the third watch. Not a theology, not a ladder of spiritual stages. A mechanism. The mechanism that makes an ordinary mind into a factory of small deaths, millions of times over, across an entire life. And then he saw something else. He saw that every link, every single one, is conditioned. Nothing in the chain arises on its own power. Each link needs the one before it in order to appear. Which means, if any link fails to arise, the whole chain for that moment ends. Remove contact. Your phone stays silent, or you are not in the room. The chain never begins. Remove feeling tone. You meet the buzz with a mind so settled that it does not label the sound as anything. The chain collapses at link 2. Remove craving. You feel the pleasant quality of the buzz without reaching for it. The chain collapses at link 3. In each case, the suffering that was about to be produced simply does not arise. The buzz happens. The mind remains whole. No small death occurs. This is the liberation. Not a dramatic liberation. Not a thunderclap. A quiet, specific, engineered collapse of the chain at a single link. One turn of the wheel that does not complete. Then another. Then another. Eventually, the wheel has lost so much fuel that it is no longer the main thing happening inside you. This is why in the Pakaya Sutta, the Buddha uses a particular phrase. He says the law of dependent arising is not dependent on him. Whether a Buddha arises or not, this is how phenomena condition one another. Whether you believe it or not, this is how your Tuesday afternoon is being built. He is not giving you a doctrine. He is describing the weather, which means you cannot argue with it any more than you can argue with rain. You can only learn how it works well enough to step out of it when it begins to fall. Feel what this means. The wandering is not a curse. It is not your karma in the movie sense. It is not the universe teaching you a lesson. It is a chain of conditioned events, each one arising because the one before it arose, each one dissolving when the one before it dissolves. The whole of it is available to clear seeing. Every link is a doorway. You do not need to be the Buddha to collapse a chain. You can do it right now, on the smallest possible scale. Try this, gently. Think of something mildly irritating that happened today. A message you did not like. A tone of voice. A task you were given that you resented. Notice, inside your body, the place where the irritation still lives. A small tightness in the jaw, perhaps. A slight heat behind the eyes. A shortening of the breath. That is the middle of a chain. Contact happened hours ago. Feeling tone arose. Craving arose. The craving to push the thing away, to be right about it, to explain it to someone. Clinging arose. A self formed around it. The aggrieved person, the one who was wronged. Now, just for this moment, let the craving loosen. You do not have to get rid of it. You only have to stop feeding it. Let the irritation sit where it sits, without chasing a conclusion about it. Watch what happens to the aggrieved self. It thins. It does not vanish. It has not been defeated. It has simply lost the fuel it needs to become the main event inside you. That is a chain collapsing at link 3. That is a small gear disengaging. That is, in miniature, what the Buddha was describing for the last 40 years of his life. The thinning is not dramatic. It will not show up on any scan. Nobody standing near you would notice it happened. But something in the mind has just discovered that the aggrieved self is not compulsory. That single discovery is the seed of every later liberation. The wheel is not stopped in a single blow. It is stopped one disengaged gear at a time, over a long and patient relationship with your own attention. But here is the thing that made him sit still for 49 nights. Every chain you collapse, even once, teaches the mind something. The mind begins to suspect that the next chain might also be optional, and the one after that, and the one after that. The whole wheel, which seemed as solid as weather, begins to look like something that was being held in place by habits of attention. You are already at the beginning of that suspicion. In the chapters ahead, we will do something specific with this mechanism. We will walk into each of the 6 realms, each of the 6 rooms your mind keeps returning to, and we will see the chain that builds that particular room. We will see which link is the most available to loosen and how. You will leave tonight with a map of your own wheel, drawn in your own handwriting. Before we enter the first realm, there is one more thing we need. A name for what actually drives the chain from the inside. What makes contact keep turning into craving? What keeps feeding the gears? At the center of the wheel of life, in every ancient painting of this teaching, there are 3 animals coiled together. A pig, a snake, a rooster. They are still turning your wheel right now. Return, for a moment, to a Tuesday afternoon. Not this one. An average one from the last 2 weeks. It is around 3:30. The light is getting soft in the window. You have made your 3rd coffee of the day. It is half drunk. You are sitting in front of a screen that contains, among other things, an email you have already read 7 times. You are not really working. You are not really resting either. Your hand moves without asking. You open a second tab. You close it. You open the same tab again. You stand up. You walk to the window. You walk back. You sit down. You reach for the phone. Inside this small, unglamorous, extremely ordinary 15 minutes, three ancient forces are running. They are the three poisons. In the Anyatitya Sutta, the Buddha names them with unusual plainness: greed, hatred, delusion. He calls them the three unwholesome roots. Every moment of suffering, a human mind produces, grows from one of these three, or from all three at once. The ancient paintings of the Wheel of Life put them at the very center of the hub. Three small animals coiled together, biting each other's tails. A rooster for greed, head turning toward whatever catches the eye. A snake for hatred, head drawn back to strike. A pig for delusion, the slow, half-asleep body that does not know where it is or where it is going. They are still at the center of your afternoon. Greed is not what you think it is. It is not the desire for expensive things. It is not ambition in the ordinary sense. It is not wanting a nicer apartment or a better job. Those are symptoms. The root is simpler and more constant than any of its symptoms. Greed is the small, almost invisible movement of the mind towards something pleasant, and its refusal to stay where it already is. Notice the movement happening right now. Your attention keeps testing the air for something more interesting than this sentence. It is not doing anything wrong. It is simply being a mind. A mind, left untrained, is a small rooster. Head turning, turning toward whatever glints next. On your Tuesday afternoon, greed is in the coffee. Greed is in the phone reach. Greed is in the moment you open the second tab before you have finished the sentence in the first tab. Greed is, at its most ordinary, the inability to be where you actually are. It is exhausting. That is the thing the tradition noticed early. Greed does not feel like pleasure. It feels like a kind of hunger that will never tell you what it is hungry for. Chasing it is what most people mean when they say they are tired. The second poison is hatred, and the English word is misleading. You do not have to hate anyone to be under its influence. The Pali word covers a much wider range. Aversion, resistance, resentment, the quiet turning away from anything that makes you uncomfortable. On your Tuesday afternoon, hatred is in the 7th reread of the email. Each reread is the mind sharpening its argument against something. Hatred is in the decision to scroll instead of feeling whatever is actually underneath the restlessness. Hatred is in the tone you used at dinner the night before, which you have now replayed 3 times in your head and made a little worse each time. It is not loud. Most of the hatred in a modern life is not loud. It is the subtle tightening around whatever we do not want to feel. It is the snake coiled quietly around the chest. The tradition is very clear about what hatred does. It narrows the mind. It shrinks the range of what the mind can perceive. When aversion is loud, there is only one thing in the room, whatever it is that the mind is turning against. The light softens in the window and you do not see it. Someone speaks kindly and you cannot take it in. The whole field of your experience has been replaced by a single, sharpened point. The third poison is the hardest to see because it is the ground the other two stand on. Delusion is not a failure to be intelligent. It is a specific failure of sight. The mind takes whatever it is currently experiencing to be simply how things are, instead of how things are appearing in this particular mind at this particular moment. Every time you believe the story your mind is telling you, fully, without any distance from it, delusion is active. Every time a mood feels like the truth about your life, delusion is active. Every time your partner's sentence, cold in your ears, is taken as confirmation of the thing you most feared, delusion is active. On your Tuesday afternoon, delusion is the slow, half-asleep quality of the whole 15 minutes. You are not really aware you are on the phone. You are not really aware that there is a choice, moment by moment, between this and something else. You are the pig in the painting, eyes nearly closed, body moving out of long habit, following the scent of whatever the last craving picked up. The Itivuttaka places delusion first of the three, in the sense that both greed and hatred depend on it. Without delusion, greed has nothing to pursue, because the mind would see clearly that nothing external can fill it. Without delusion, hatred has nothing to fight, because the mind would see clearly that whatever is in front of it is passing anyway. Delusion is what keeps the other two running. In another discourse, the Nidana Sutta, the Buddha puts it even more practically. He says, actions born from greed, hatred, or delusion ripen wherever the person goes, in whatever body, in whatever moment. You cannot outrun an action planted in these three. It follows you, not as a punishment, as a seed that was planted, waiting for the right conditions to grow. Come back to the 15 minutes. In a single afternoon, you have felt all three. The rooster was in the phone reach. The snake was in the email reread. The pig was in the slow blur of the whole thing. They were not three separate forces behaving in sequence. They were three aspects of a single disturbed state, turning like a small storm behind your ribs. This is what the Buddha meant by calling them the three roots. They grow together, they feed each other, and they are almost always active at once. In the Dhammapada, he gave the clearest possible line about their character. There is no fire like lust. There is no grip like hatred. There is no snare like delusion. Take each one slowly. Lust burns. It is hot, fast, and leaves you scorched and still hungry. Hatred grips. It is clinging, tight, and refuses to let the object go even once the situation has ended. Delusion snares. It is quiet, almost invisible, and traps you by convincing you that you are free to move. These are not theological metaphors. These are descriptions of what happens inside a body when each poison is in charge. This is also why the tradition has spent 25 centuries naming them so carefully. A force that has no name runs you. A force that has a name you can learn to sit beside. And here is where the teaching becomes gentle again. The three poisons are not enemies you need to defeat. They are patterns in the mind, patterns as old as this species, patterns that arose because the mind was trying, in its own confused way, to protect you. The rooster was trying to get you fed. The snake was trying to keep you safe. The pig was trying not to be overwhelmed. None of them is evil. None of them needs to be destroyed. They only need to be seen. Seeing loosens them. Naming loosens them. Simply recognizing, in the moment, that a particular force is currently running is the first thing that weakens its grip. Not because recognition is a magical technique, because the poisons only function when the mind is fused with them. The moment the mind sees them clearly, the fusion breaks. Try it in miniature. The next time you reach for the phone when you did not mean to, name it silently to yourself. Rooster. That is the whole practice. You do not have to stop reaching. You do not have to scold the mind. You only have to name the pattern that is currently turning. Watch how the reach changes when it has been named. Something small but real loosens. The next time you catch yourself rereading a message you do not want to reply to, name it. Snake. The next time you notice you have been scrolling for 20 minutes and have no idea what you saw, name it. Pig. That is the practice. Small, silent, repeated over hundreds of afternoons, until naming becomes automatic and the fusion never quite fully forms. These three forces turn the wheel, and the wheel has 6 rooms. 6 states of mind a person can wake into on any ordinary Thursday. 6 complete worlds, each with its own weather, its own logic, its own peculiar kind of suffering. Over the next several chapters, you will enter each one. You will stay long enough to recognize it as a place you have been. You will leave knowing the particular door out of it. The first room is the most comfortable of the 6. It is also, perhaps, the most deceiving. There is a particular quality to the afternoon when nothing is wrong. The coffee is the right temperature. The message you were dreading never came. The sun is slanting through the window the way it did when you were 14, when summer felt endless and Monday was a word that had not been invented yet. This is the first room. The Buddha gave it a simple name, the realm of the Devas, the God realm. He meant a state of mind you have entered many times, for short stretches, without ever naming it. It is the room where the edges of wanting go soft, where the body has enough, where the mind, for a little while, stops counting. Notice the bodily signature. The shoulders have dropped a 1/4 inch. The jaw has remembered there is no reason to clench. The breath reaches a little deeper than it did an hour ago. There is a faint warmth behind the ribs, as if some small furnace has finally been fed. You visit this room on the Sunday afternoons when the week's work is done and the week's dread has not yet started. You visit it for 90 seconds after a good meal, before the next thought arrives. You visited it this morning, perhaps in the shower, that small stretch where nothing was being asked of you. You visit it in the car, sometimes at the red light before the green, when a song you had forgotten comes on, and for 30 seconds you are 14 again. The God realm is the softest of the 6. It is also the most deceiving. Here is what the Buddha saw. The mind in the God realm forgets something. It forgets that this state will end. Ask the person in the soft afternoon, is this permanent? They will laugh and say, of course not. Yet underneath the answer, in the place where the mind actually lives, a quieter belief has settled in. This feeling, this ease, this version of Sunday, this is the real one. The other hours, the anxious ones, the tight ones, the rooms that came before, those were the aberration. This is how it should be. This is how, eventually, it will stay. That quiet belief is the poison at the center of the room. The Pali word for it is mana, the conceit that takes ease and calls it a destination. It is subtler than what we usually mean by conceit. It is the way the mind, when it is comfortable, stops looking around. Look at what the comfortable mind stops seeing. It stops seeing the man at the traffic light with the cardboard sign, the one it would have noticed on a hard day. It stops hearing the friend's voice in the message, which on closer listening was not quite right. It stops feeling the small tightness in its own chest, the tightness that, if attended to, might have said something important. It stops wondering about the older relative who has gone quiet for a week. It stops sensing the small strain in the body that is whispering, very softly, for rest. The God realm has a signature blindness. It cannot see the poor. It cannot see the poorness in itself either. The places where the pleasure has quietly borrowed from somewhere and the debt has not yet been called in. There is a verse in the Dhammapada. The Buddha says it plainly, from pleasure comes grief. From pleasure comes fear. For one who is free from pleasure, there is no grief. Whence fear? Listen to that again. He said that pleasure, when it is taken as the thing itself, becomes the seed of the grief that follows it. Because pleasure ends, and the mind that was resting in it has not prepared for its ending. Think of the last really good week you had. The one where the work was flowing. The relationships were easy. You slept well for 4 nights in a row. The body, for once, did not wake you at 4 in the morning with some nameless worry. What happened on the 5th day? Something shifted. A message did not arrive. A small pain returned to the lower back. The weather turned. Someone said something in a flat tone you had not heard from them before. Here is the strange part. The fall from the fifth day was not proportional to what actually changed. The disappointment was larger than the disappointing thing. That is the God realm collapsing. The mind had begun to lease the good week as permanent, and the contract, which the world never actually signed, turned out to be void. The Tibetan teachers put this very plainly. They said the beings of the God realm live very long lives. They live surrounded by beauty. They forget that anything ever suffered. And then, near the end of their long life, the signs begin to arrive. The old teachers named them, one by one. The flower garland at the neck begins to wither. The celestial robes, which for 1,000 years have smelled of sandalwood, lose their fragrance. The skin, which had never once sweated, grows damp. The companions drift away. The throne, which had been comfortable forever, stops holding the body right. And the Deva realizes, in a sudden collapsing hour, that the afternoon was not eternal, and the fall from it will be steep. You do not need to believe in celestial beings to feel this. You have been the Deva at the end of his flower garland. You were this person at the end of the good holiday. On the last evening of the long weekend, when the Monday email had not yet been read but was already sitting in the inbox, already tightening the stomach. The flowers were withering. The robes were losing their fragrance. The room was beginning to end. You have also been the Deva at the end of a love, at the end of a career chapter, at the end of a friendship that once felt permanent. The sign does not always arrive as disaster. Often it arrives as an afternoon that is a quarter-inch less bright than yesterday's. A conversation that goes cool in a way you cannot name. The garland is so delicate you only see it withering when you look for it. What does the practitioner do in this room? The practitioner stays. The teaching asks for something quieter than refusal. Ascetics refuse pleasure, starve themselves of ease, distrust every soft afternoon. The Buddha walked that path for 6 years and rejected it as useless. He ate 1 grain of rice a day, they say, until his spine could be felt from the front of his belly. And he found that the starving mind is no closer to freedom than the satisfied one. The practitioner stays in the room and they see it. They notice the warmth behind the ribs, and they notice, underneath the warmth, the small quiet belief that this warmth will continue. They see the belief without dismantling the warmth. They enjoy the afternoon without asking the afternoon to be more than an afternoon. This is the practice the Buddha called appamada. The word means heedful, staying awake inside comfort instead of falling asleep inside it. In the Dhammapada, he said it this way: heedfulness is the path to the deathless. Heedlessness is the path to death. The heedful do not die. The heedless are as if already dead. He is describing what happens to the god who sleeps inside his palace. The one who stops noticing, who lets the hours slide by on the belief that nothing will ever be asked of him. The mind that has stopped being present for its own life, because its life is, for a short season, easy. Try something right now, where you are. If the moment you are in has any quality of comfort, the chair is fine, the body is fed, the next hour has nothing demanding in it, notice that. Let it be here. See that it is here. Feel the small places in the body that are resting, the shoulders, the jaw, the space behind the eyes. And notice, quietly, that it will pass. That second noticing is the one the God realm forgets. When both are held at the same time, the enjoyment and the ending, the room becomes safe. The pleasure can be received without the debt being accumulated. Because the mind has stopped pretending the pleasure was earned forever. The mind that cannot see its own ending is the mind that will fall hardest when the ending arrives. And the ending always arrives. The Sunday becomes Monday. The holiday has a last day. The good year has a December. The healthy body, eventually, has a morning when it is not healthy any longer. The soft afternoon has an evening that begins to cool, and then a night. There is one more thing to see in this room before we leave it. The God realm shows up at every scale. Whole cultures live there. Whole decades live there. A city at the peak of its prosperity. A company in the year before the market turns. A generation that has forgotten the wars of its grandparents. A body in its early 30s, still untouched by any serious illness, convinced somewhere underneath that the body will always be this. They are all, for a while, in the first room, and they are all, for a while, blind in the way that room makes you blind. This is diagnosis. When you find yourself, or your family, or your country, in a soft season, do one thing. Remember that seasons end. Then enjoy the soft season without clutching at it. Let the tea be hot for as long as it is hot, and let it become room temperature when it does. That is what a heedful life looks like. So the first room is not a room to flee. It is a room to stay awake inside of. You have visited it today, probably, for some minutes. You will visit it tomorrow. When you do, try this. Let the pleasure be real and let it be ending. Both at once. That is the beginning of freedom from the first room. The practitioner notices, with kindness, that the petals are already falling. And then, having been a god for an afternoon, they are ready to see what happens in the next room. Because the second room is very close to this one. It begins the moment the pleasure in the first room meets someone else's pleasure, and the mind, which a moment ago was at ease, begins, very quietly, to compare. The first comparison is always quiet. You are in your own Sunday afternoon, the soft one from the last room, and your phone lights up. A name you have not seen in 3 years. A photo. They are standing on a balcony in a city you have never been to, holding a glass of something sunset-colored, and the caption says 4 words you did not expect to read. Something shifts in the stomach. A small tilting of the ground underneath the afternoon. 30 seconds ago, the coffee was the right temperature. Now the coffee is just coffee. And the window, which was slanting summer light, is just a window. The afternoon, which had been enough, has discovered it is not. You have just entered the second room. The Buddha called its inhabitants the Asuras, the demigods. In English, teachers usually call it the demigod realm. It is the realm right next door to the first one. So close, in fact, that some old texts say the two share a border, and the border is a tree. The tree has many names in the old scriptures: the wish-fulfilling tree, the coral tree, the pariyata. Its roots are planted deep in the demigod realm. Its branches reach up into the god realm, and the fruit grows only where the branches are. The Asuras plant, the Asuras water, the Asuras tend the soil and watch the trunk grow through their floor and up into the ceiling. And the Devas, sitting in the upper branches, eat the fruit. This is the old story. It is not really a story about trees. It is a story about every afternoon when you realize the colleague who did less somehow ended up with more. Every year when the friend who worked fewer hours got the raise. Every time the life you had been planting turned out to be fruit for someone else's branch. The old teachers named the Asura's signature poison. The Pali word is issa. It means envy. The theatrical envy of fairy tales, the green-faced kind with witches and mirrors, is only the caricature. The real issa is quieter. It is what the mind feels when it cannot stop noticing what someone else has. Look at the signature. The Asura wants what the person above him has, always. His own possessions have become invisible to him, and when he finally climbs to where that person was, the person has moved higher, and the wanting moves with him. The Asura is perpetually 5 minutes behind a life that is not yet his. A life that, even when it arrives, immediately moves. Notice the bodily signature of this room. The breath is shallow. The jaw is braced, as if measuring. The eyes are scanning. The chest has a low hum in it, a continuous low-grade tension that the mind narrates as ambition and the body quietly knows is pain. You visit this room more than any other, probably many times a day. It arrives when the co-worker's promotion is announced. It arrives when the younger cousin's engagement is shared in the family chat. It arrives when the friend posts the apartment, a good one, a slightly better one than yours, and you scroll past it pretending you have not seen it. It arrives at funerals too, the small stab when a colleague is praised by a person whose praise you wanted. The quiet registering at the wake of a mutual friend of which mourners were mentioned by name and which were not. Issa does not wait for dignified occasions. Issa arrives whenever someone else is having a moment. The Asura in the old iconography is usually pictured holding a weapon, and the old stories describe the Asuras as always at war, fighting endlessly against the Devas for the fruit of the tree. They plant harder, they work harder, they organize, and the Devas, in the upper branches, continue to eat. Here is what the old teachers saw. The Asura's war cannot be won. It cannot be won because the tree is a disguise. The tree is the mind itself, busy, always trying to catch up to its own image of what it should have by now. When the Asura finally climbs into the upper branches, the branches move. Higher branches appear. New fruit grows somewhere the Asura has not yet climbed. The image of the life the Asura is owed has always been, and will always be, just slightly above him. This is why the traditional Buddhist map puts the demigod realm among the realms of suffering. The Asuras live close to paradise. They can see it through the leaves. They can hear the devas laughing. They cannot taste it. The distance between their branch and the fruit is exactly the distance between the life you have and the life your feed keeps showing you someone else has. There is a teaching in the Pali Canon about this kind of pain. A monk asked the Buddha why people who have done no great harm suffer so much. The Buddha answered that one of the quieter sources of suffering is the habit of measuring one's own life against the lives of others. He called it a thorn, driven into the heart by the practitioner themselves. The thorn cannot be removed by getting more of what the other has. The thorn is removed by seeing that it was never about the other at all. Look at the mind, Inisar, carefully. It is rarely looking at the other person. It is using the other person as a mirror that shows the mind what it does not yet have. The suffering is entirely in the mirror. The colleague's promotion becomes the measurement of your own standing. The cousin's engagement becomes the calendar against which your own years are audited. The friend's apartment becomes the map you have been failing to follow. And all the time, the mind is doing something the old teachers warned about. It is grasping at comparison as if comparison itself could make a life. Comparison is a measuring tool. It has never built a single life. There is a story the Tibetan teachers tell about this. An Asura climbed the Pariyata tree for 100 years. When he finally reached the top branch, bleeding, exhausted, triumphant, he opened his hand to take the fruit. The fruit had already been taken. A deva in the next branch was chewing it, smiling, absent-mindedly. The Asura looked down at his empty hand, then up at the deva. Then he began to climb again. This is the tragedy of the second room. The Asura cannot stop climbing, even when he suspects the fruit will always be gone by the time he arrives. Because something in him would rather keep climbing than sit still on a branch he already has and eat the smaller fruit that grew there. What does the practitioner do in this room? Ambition is allowed. Striving is allowed. The practitioner does one specific thing differently. When the stomach tilts at the news of someone else's flourishing, the practitioner pauses. They stop climbing, just for a moment, and they try something that is almost impossible at first. They rejoice. The Pali name for this practice is mudita, sympathetic joy. It is the practice of feeling, in your own chest, the warmth of the other person's warmth. The mind that was tilted by the photo on the balcony can learn, slowly, with practice, to see that photo as a gift. The wound was never in the photo. The wound was in the measuring. When mudita arrives, even for 1 second, the tree disappears. There is no contested fruit. There is no upper branch. There is just one person's good moment, received by another person without measurement. The second room empties out. Both rooms empty out because the whole architecture of comparison was holding them both up. Try this, quietly, with the next person whose good news tilts you. Before the mind starts measuring, say one sentence inwardly. May their good thing be genuinely good for them. Just that. Do not make it larger. Do not attach a prayer. Let the sentence be, and notice what happens in the chest. Something loosens the first time you do this. Something surprising. The body rebels for half a second because the body is used to the adrenaline of comparison and experiences its absence as a small withdrawal. And then, underneath the withdrawal, a second feeling arrives. A small warmth. The body is actually made for this. The heart opens. The chest warms. The measuring stops, just long enough for the afternoon to come back. The Asura realm does not vanish because you visited Mudita once. You will re-enter this room, probably, before the evening is out. The practice of sympathetic joy is slow. It does not convert the whole mind in one Sunday. It works one small tilt at a time, one photo at a time, one piece of family news at a time. The tree is tall, and the climb has been long. Coming down is slower than climbing was. Every practitioner who has walked this path says the same thing about the second room. The fruit you were climbing for was never real. The branch you were already on had fruit that you did not notice. And the piece of the first room, the one next door, has always been available to anyone willing to stop climbing for long enough to taste what is already in their hand. There is one more thing to see in this room before we leave it. The Asura realm shows up at every scale. Whole industries live there. Whole nations do. A tech company during its stock climb. A political movement defined by who it is climbing above. A social class spending its decade trying to become the class above it. They are all on the tree. They are all, collectively, watching a branch higher than the one they sit on. And the fruit at the top is always, as the old story says, being eaten by somebody else. So the second room closes when the mind finally stops using other people as a mirror, when the tilting at someone else's balcony photo becomes, over time, a quiet gladness that they are having a beautiful evening somewhere. That gladness is the signature of a mind that has stopped needing to be in a different life than the one it is already in. And when the mind stops needing to be elsewhere, something strange happens. The exhaustion of the second room catches up. Every Asura, after years of climbing, is tired. The body has been held at low-grade alarm for so long that when the alarm finally drops, a heavy stillness arrives underneath. That stillness is the doorway to the third room. The third room is what happens when the mind falls exhausted out of the second, when comparison has emptied it out, when the climber sits down at last and does not stand up again. The body goes on autopilot. The hours slide by without anyone at the wheel. The tired mind, having given up the climb, simply begins to obey. The alarm does not surprise you anymore. It goes off at the same minute it went off yesterday, and the day before, and the morning stretching back behind that through a season you cannot quite remember. Your hand finds it in the dark without looking. Your feet find the floor. Your body walks itself to the kitchen while the mind is still catching up to the morning. The kettle goes on. The same mug comes down from the same shelf. The same spoon turns the same number of circles in the same cup. Somewhere in the building, someone else is doing something very similar. Somewhere in the city, 100,000 people are repeating, almost identically, the gestures they repeated yesterday. You have just entered the third room. The Buddha called its inhabitants the animals. In the old maps, this realm is called Tiracana, which means, literally, the ones who go sideways, referring to those who walk without ever lifting their heads to look. In Pali, the signature poison of this room has a name, and the name is moha. It means delusion, though that translation is too dramatic. Moha is closer to fog. It is the soft greyness that settles over a mind when the mind has stopped looking. Notice what the old teachers called this room, the realm of not seeing. The choice of word matters. The inhabitant of the third room can see. They have simply stopped. The eyes are open. The traffic is going by. The meetings are happening. Nobody inside is actually watching. The bodily signature of this room is perhaps the easiest to recognize. There is a certain slackness around the eyes. The shoulders have found a position and stopped moving. The breath is shallow in a particular way, simply unattended. If someone suddenly asks you what you are thinking, you discover, honestly, that you are not sure. The thoughts were there a moment ago. Something was happening. The one who was supposed to be watching had wandered off somewhere, and the day kept going without a witness. This is how most adult life gets lived. The commute, the inbox, the 3 specific sentences you say to the barista every morning, the particular route your feet take across the office floor, the hand reaching for the phone the moment a queue forms at the supermarket. The body has learned, over many years, how to handle the outer shape of a day without requiring the mind to attend. And the mind, relieved of its duty, has taken a long nap. At 7:52 on a weekday morning, a subway car slows into a station. The doors open. 40 people get on. Almost every one of them is looking at the same object, the same rectangle of light held at the same angle in the same hand. No one is speaking. No one is looking up. The car accelerates, and 40 minds are carried forward together inside the same fog, each thinking they are alone in their own head. This is a photograph. The mind in the third room is the mind most human adults wake up inside on most days. If the Buddha were sitting on that train this morning, he would understand. He lived inside this fog himself for the first 35 years of his life. He named this room precisely because he knew how much of a life gets lived inside it. The old texts name this state of fog as the primary trouble. In the 12-link chain of suffering the Buddha described, the very first link, the one that begins the whole turning wheel, is called avijja. Avijja means not knowing. not seeing, the original absence of attention. Every other suffering on the wheel grows from this first one. The craving, the aversion, the tilting afternoons in the second room, all of them are downstream of something much quieter. The mind simply stopped looking at what was happening. There is a teaching in the Pali Canon that speaks directly to the third room. A wandering seeker named Bahya had been walking for weeks. Something had broken open in him, a premonition, a nearness to his own death that he could not shake, and he was almost running by the time he arrived at the gates of Savatthi. He found the Buddha on his arms round, walking through the morning light with a bowl in his hand. Bahya dropped to his knees and begged for a teaching. The Buddha said now was not the time. Bahya begged again. The Buddha, looking at him for a long moment, then spoke only one sentence. In what is seen, let there be only the seen. In what is heard, only the heard. In what is sensed, only the sensed. Bahya heard it, and something in him woke up on the spot. What did he wake from? From the fog of the third room, from the habit of receiving the world through so many layers of mental rehearsal that nothing ever quite arrives. The birds outside your window this morning, if you are honest, did not really reach you. A commentary about the birds reached you, a faint label that said bird, paired with a background assumption that you have heard birds before and know what they sound like. The actual sound, the specific pitch and length and strangeness of this particular bird on this particular morning, passed through your kitchen without being received. This is the quiet tragedy of the third room. The days do not pass unlived, they pass unwitnessed. Your own wedding, the summer your child learned to ride a bicycle, the last evenings before your father became ill. They all happened. You were there. The one who was supposed to be keeping the record was somewhere else, scrolling, planning, rehearsing. When you go looking for those afternoons in memory afterwards, you find only the faintest outline. And it is not only afternoons that are lost to the fog, it is the people in them. The partner whose mood you have not actually looked at for 3 weeks because you have been too tired to lift your eyes. The old friend whose voice, on a recent phone call, sounded different in some small way that you registered and then let pass. The parent who was trying to tell you something the last time you saw them, and you half heard it through the fog, and you are still half hearing it, and they are not here anymore. This is what moha costs. The hours were already going to pass. What the fog takes is your receptivity, the capacity to be changed by what you are near. The third room does a very specific kind of damage. It makes you miss your life while it is happening. The practice that opens the door of this room has an old name. The Pali word is sati. It is usually translated as mindfulness, though mindfulness has become such a loud word in modern life that it has almost stopped meaning anything. A closer translation of sati is remembering. Remembering to be here. Remembering that something is happening. Remembering that the one who is supposed to be watching is in fact available. Sati does not require a meditation cushion. It does not require incense, or 20 minutes, or a quiet room. It requires a single act, repeated often throughout the day. The act is this: come back. That is all. When you notice that the last 10 minutes of your life happened without you, come back. Come back to the sound in the room. Come back to the weight of your feet on the floor. Come back to the temperature of the air on the backs of your hands. The coming back can be clumsy. The coming back can be without any insight at all. It still works. Something small happens when you do. The room, which had been wallpaper, becomes a room again. The sandwich in your hand, which had been calories, becomes bread and cheese and a specific afternoon. The child talking to you from the back of the car, who had been background noise, becomes a specific 6-year-old telling you a specific story about a specific worm she saw on the way home. The fog thins. The life that was already happening becomes perceivable again. The first time Sati returns after a long absence, it often arrives uninvited. A glass of water is in your hand. You are walking back to your desk with it. Suddenly, for one clean second, you feel the coldness of the glass in your palm, the weight of it, the precise temperature. The experience is ordinary. It is just the glass arriving. You had been holding it for half a minute before you noticed it was there. Or another moment you have perhaps already had. You are walking home from somewhere, attention elsewhere. The street you are on has been walked by your feet 1,000 times. The buildings slide past in the usual order. And then, for some reason you cannot name, you look up. The sky, which has been overhead the whole time, is suddenly there. An enormous silver afternoon, clouds piled in a shape you have never seen before, light slanting down through a gap in the trees. You stand still. You do not know how long you stand still. When you begin walking again, you are carrying the sky with you. These moments are the natural condition of a mind that has remembered itself. The fog parts. The world, which had always been here, appears. And the one who was supposed to be watching finally is. The old teachers who walked this path describe a quiet astonishment that comes over the practitioner in these moments. Nothing has changed in the external circumstances. The commute is still the commute. The inbox is still the inbox. Something has become visible that was always visible. The ordinary was beautiful the whole time. You had simply been sleeping through it. This is why the Buddha, in so many of his talks, returned again and again to one instruction. Wake up. The word Buddha itself means awakened one. Simply awake. Awake in the way a person is awake the moment they step out of a warm dream into the sharp morning air. Every practitioner who begins to come back says something surprising about the first weeks. At the very start, the coming back is uncomfortable. The fog had been doing something for them. It had been holding a feeling at arm's length. When the fog thins, the feeling is there, waiting. It had been waiting for years, sometimes decades. And when the practitioner sits still long enough to meet it, they discover that underneath the soft grey of the third room, there is a very old hunger. That hunger is the fourth room. The hunger is quieter than you expected. That is the first surprising thing about meeting it. You had imagined, perhaps, something storm-sized, a great roaring absence that would knock you sideways and announce itself. The hunger of the fourth room is quieter than that. It is a low, continuous ache in the chest, an undertone you did not realize was playing until the rest of the music stopped. The Buddha called its inhabitants the pretas. In English, teachers usually call them the hungry ghosts. They are drawn, in the old paintings, with bodies that do not quite make sense. An enormous rounded belly, a mouth the size of a pinprick, a throat as thin as a needle. They are forever eating. They are forever hungry. The food goes in, or tries to, and somehow the belly never fills. You already know this body. It is the particular feeling you have 8 seconds after the package arrives. The box is on the doormat. You pick it up. You carry it inside with the small, bright thrill that comes from a thing you ordered finally being here. You cut the tape. You lift the object out. You hold it in your hand. And something, almost immediately, has already moved on. Simply on. The attention goes back to the phone. Another tab opens. The next thing to want is already being compared. Compared, added to a list, placed in a cart. The object in your hand, the one you wanted 10 days ago so much that you chose to spend money on it, is being carried to a shelf that already contains several other objects you once wanted. The shelf keeps filling. The want keeps moving. In the old Pali texts, this mechanism has a name. The name is tanha. It means thirst. It is usually translated as craving, though thirst is closer, because thirst is a thing that arises in the body without anyone choosing it, and that is what tanha is. Tanha is older than character. It is the default mechanical churning of a mind that has never been taught how to rest. When the Buddha, in the very first talk he gave after his awakening, named the origin of suffering, he named one single mechanism. He called it tanha. He described 3 shapes that thirst takes. The thirst for pleasant experience, a beautiful meal, a good film, a soft Sunday morning. The thirst to become something, someone respected, someone senior, someone the others finally stop doubting. And the thirst to get away from the body you have, from the feeling you are feeling, from the afternoon as it actually is. All 3 flavors run through most lives, most days, most hours, sometimes simultaneously. The old image of the hungry ghost was never literal. The enormous belly is the vastness of what the mind wants, a general want that is always underneath the particular ones. The pinprick mouth is the tiny aperture through which real satisfaction can actually enter. The needle-thin throat is the fact that any food you try to send down it, almost none of it reaches the stomach. The bowl is never full because the bowl is the wrong shape. The 4th room appears in every arena of modern life. It appears at the supermarket, yes, and in the shopping cart, and on the fridge, and on the credit card statement. The hunger reaches much further than things. The preter is hungry for recognition, for followers, for the text back that does not come, for the parental approval that is still, at 50, being negotiated for the one compliment from the one person that would finally settle the question of whether you are lovable. It is hungry for the wedding that will finally make the relationship real, for the baby that will finally make the marriage loved, for the promotion that will finally quiet the nerves of self-doubt, for the house with the particular light in the particular neighborhood that will finally feel like home. Underneath every one of these wants, the same low, continuous note is playing. Always somewhere else. Always something more. Never here. The craving moves through objects. Objects are only the shape it is wearing this afternoon. Tomorrow it will wear a different shape, a relationship, a role, a particular version of yourself you have been trying for years to become. And when you finally become it, somewhere in the second week of having become it, the wanting has already left. It has moved to the next ridge. It is waving at you from there. There is a verse in the Dhammapada that describes this. The Buddha said that craving, in an unawakened mind, grows like a creeper. Feed it, and it spreads along the ground, and then up the walls, and then across the roof. Cut off one shoot, and 3 more appear. Give the creeper what it wants, and it grows. Refuse to water it, and eventually it falls away. This is the teaching the practitioner meets in the 4th room. Every acquisition feeds the creeper. Every successful pursuit strengthens the mechanism of pursuing. The difficulty of the hungry ghost is this: wanting has become its entire mode of being alive. You can see this in the specific architecture of a day. Wake, reach for the phone, scroll through other people's highlights, which are curated glimpses of things you do not yet have. A new restaurant opening, a colleague promoted, a friend on a beach in a country you have been meaning to go to. Each of these images quietly becomes, for the mind, another shoot of the creeper. By the time you are in the shower, you are already composing a small list of future acquisitions, none of which you were thinking about when you went to bed. Now comes the discovery the old teachers kept pointing to. The ghost is thirsty, not greedy. That single reframing changes everything. Greed assumes a grasping self who should know better. Thirst assumes only a body in a condition. The body is parched. Of course it reaches for water. The real question is whether the water it is reaching for can actually reach the thirst. And here is what any practitioner who sits still for long enough eventually sees. The hunger arises in the chest before any object appears to blame for it. The object gets blamed because the object is what the attention notices in the moment the sensation is loudest. The sensation was there before the object, and it will be there after. The object is a costume. The hunger is the body underneath. The practice in this room is simple and very difficult. When the wanting arises, do not feed it. Do not fight it. Do not ask it to be quieter. Simply sit with it. Feel it. Let it be there in the chest, in the stomach, in the slight quickening of the breath. Watch what it does when nobody acts on it. At first, the wanting fights you. The mind generates reasons. Just this once. Surely it would be fine. Think of how much better you would feel. Think of how much you have earned it. The reasons are convincing, the way thirst makes salt water look convincing to a parched traveler. If you can stay with the thirst itself rather than chasing its story, something begins to soften. What the wanting does, if you can manage to stay with it, is astonishing. It rises, it peaks, it falls, exactly like a wave. The wave that felt, in its rising, like a lifelong condition, is revealed by 1 minute of attention to be a temporary weather. It came, it went, and you, sitting on the shore of it, did not have to do anything at all. This is what the Dhammapada calls the lotus leaf. Water falls on the lotus leaf, and the leaf does not hold it. The water beads. The water rolls off. The leaf stays dry. A mind that has learned to let craving rise and fall without chasing it becomes, over time, that kind of leaf. Life still happens on top of it. Hunger still arises. The hunger no longer soaks in. The first time this happens, even for a few seconds, is quietly astonishing. You wanted something 10 minutes ago. The wanting was loud. You sat with it instead of acting on it. And now, without anything being acquired, without any satisfaction being delivered, the wanting has left. The room, which had felt unbearable without that particular thing, is now simply a room containing you, breathing, unacquired, and for some reason no longer in pain. This is the first drink of real water. The fourth room shows up at every scale. Whole economies run on it. Entire advertising industries exist to keep the throat narrow and the want moving. A device in your pocket, designed by some of the most brilliant minds of a generation, has as its single engineering goal the continuous multiplication of small thirsts. Every scroll is a drop of salt water. It tastes, for 1 second, like it quenches. Then the thirst, slightly larger, returns. The hungry ghost, therefore, is a water system the modern world has been engineered deliberately to keep you inside of. The condition is mechanical. Knowing this is a kind of mercy. It removes the shame from the diagnosis. The shame was just another shoot of the creeper. Every practitioner who begins to walk out of the fourth room describes the same thing about the way out. The hunger continues to arise. It simply stops being a command. It becomes something you notice, the way you notice weather. There is wanting today, you think, and then you do what is in front of you, and the wanting, eventually, passes through. And for most practitioners, this is where the journey could end. The first 4 rooms have been walked through. The creeper has been trimmed. There is, underneath all of it, a strange, quiet beginning to gather. For some practitioners, on some nights, there is 1 more room to enter. Below the hunger, further down than any of the first 4, there is a room the old teachers spoke of with unusual gentleness. A room where the mind has become so exhausted by its own unmet wanting that the wanting itself has curdled. The thirst has turned into something sharper, something that can wound the mind that carries it and wound any person the mind reaches toward. That room is the fifth one. There is a voice you know. It does not arrive as a stranger. It speaks in your own vocabulary, in the cadence of your own thinking, using the private words that only someone inside your life would know. That is what makes it so convincing. That is what makes it feel, when it speaks, like it is telling the truth. The voice tells you what you are. It does so with remarkable precision. It reminds you of the thing you said at the dinner 7 years ago. It replays the moment in the interview when your voice cracked. It lists, in order, the specific ways you have failed the people who trusted you. And it does all this calmly, like a prosecutor who has already won. You have spent years learning the voice's moves. It knows your name. It knows the particular way you embarrass yourself in meetings. It knows the face you make when you catch your own reflection in a shop window and flinch. It has memorized every unanswered text, every cancelled plan, every friendship that has cooled without explanation, and it has arranged these facts into an argument you have lost before you have spoken. The old teachers mapped this territory. They called the room Naraka. English teachers usually translate the word as hell. The translation is imperfect. Hell in the Western imagination is eternal. Naraka in the Buddhist map is temporary. Every being who enters Naraka eventually leaves. The room is a room, even this one. Notice the bodily signature. The shoulders are up around the ears. The jaw is clenched. The breath is high in the chest, shallow, rapid. The eyes, if they are looking at anything, are looking at a specific image on the screen of the mind, the email, the conversation, the person, and the image is being held there, turned over, fed. The body is preparing, silently, for a fight that will never happen because the opponent is not in the room. The opponent is inside. Naraka takes two shapes. In one shape, the hatred is turned outward. A colleague wronged you. A family member said the thing they should never have said. A stranger on the road cut you off. And now, 3 hours later, you are still arguing with them inside your head. The argument will not end. The body stays braced. The mind produces sentence after sentence of devastating clarity, none of which will ever be spoken to the person who is no longer there. In the other shape, the hatred is turned inward. This shape is quieter, colder, in many ways, harder to leave. The mind has become a prosecutor whose only case is against the self who is thinking the thoughts. The evidence is endless because the mind writes it in real time. Every small mistake is filed. Every awkward moment is Exhibit A. Every text that went unanswered becomes proof of some deeper, older, more terrible wrongness. The two shapes often braid. The mind that spent the morning rehearsing an argument with the colleague, by afternoon has turned the same energy inward and is now rehearsing an argument with itself about why it is the kind of person who rehearses arguments. Outer hatred has a way of becoming inner hatred when the outer target moves out of reach. The fire does not mind which direction it burns. The Pali word for the poison of this room is dosa. It is often translated as hatred, though aversion is closer. Dosa is the mind's response when something arises that it cannot bear to be with. The something can be another person. The something can be your own face in the mirror. In either case, the mind contracts. It pushes. It wants the thing to be other than it is. When the thing refuses, the pushing turns into pain, and the pain turns into fuel for more pushing. This is the self-generating fire of Naraka. The old teachers were emphatic about one thing. Naraka is temporary. In the old cosmology, the fire is described in vivid detail, but every description ends with the same phrase. Beings dwell there for many lifetimes, and then the karmic fruit of their actions exhausts itself, and they are born elsewhere. Nothing stays. Not joy, not comfort, not even the deepest contraction a mind can generate. The wheel keeps turning, even in the hottest room. Apply this to your own life. The period you could not get out of bed, the year you thought would never end, the stretch of grief or rage or self-hatred, so total it seemed to be the new permanent climate, eventually passed. You may not remember when it stopped being unbearable. That is part of how it stopped. 100 small, unnoticed moments added up, and at some point you realized, looking back, that you were not sitting in that same room anymore. The Buddhist teaching here is precise. There is no eternal hell in this map. Every being who enters Naraka eventually exits it, even if only after what felt like forever. In the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha describes what happens to those who have lived inside Naraka for what seemed like endless time. He says simply, eventually they too awaken. Eventually they too are born into a realm where kindness can be learned. The door is always somewhere in the wall, even when you cannot see it from where you are sitting. Here is what the practitioner discovers in this room, sometimes by accident. Even in the worst of it, the mind does not generate the voice continuously. There are gaps. A half second when you notice the light on the kitchen counter before the voice starts up again. A breath that goes in and comes out before the prosecution resumes. A moment when you make your tea, and the tea is good, and for 3 seconds the fifth room has no power. Those gaps are the door. They happen all day, not as rewards for advanced practitioners, as the natural rhythm of any mind, even one in the middle of the fifth room. The practice is to notice them, to feel, even for 3 seconds, the difference between the mind that is braced and the mind that is simply breathing. That noticing is already the first breath out. There is a verse in the Dhammapada that speaks directly to the mind in this room. The Buddha said the practitioner should establish kindness first within themselves, before reaching outward to teach anyone else. The order matters. The practitioner who cannot be kind to their own tired mind at the end of a long day cannot be sustainably kind to the child sitting across the table from them. The same practitioner, refusing to forgive themselves for the dinner 7 years ago, is refusing, implicitly, to forgive anyone else for anything. Kindness, the Buddha said, begins at home. The practice the Buddha taught for this room has an old name. The Pali word is metta. It is usually translated as loving kindness, though the truer sense is friendliness. Being toward yourself what a good friend would be toward someone they loved. A friend who, seeing you in the kitchen at the end of a bad day, would not sit down across from you and list your failures. A friend would put their hand on your shoulder. A friend would ask you what you had eaten. A friend would refuse, plainly, to let you continue to be spoken to the way you have been speaking to yourself. Metta is practical. It is a physical rearrangement of how the inside of the skull treats the person who lives there. It can be practiced in one sentence. May I be well. May I be at ease. May I, for this one breath, be allowed to rest from the prosecution. Say the sentence quietly to yourself the next time the voice begins. It will not silence the voice. The first time, the voice has been speaking for decades. Something else will happen. A small softening in the chest, a slight relaxation in the shoulders, the sense that, for 1 second, you have placed yourself on your own side. If you can say the sentence a second time, something else shifts. A small image may arise. The face of yourself as a child. The morning you cried in the school bathroom and nobody knew. The teenager who tried so hard to be liked. You may find that, in a way you did not expect, you begin to speak the sentence toward that earlier version of yourself. May you be well. May you be at ease. The prosecution stumbles for a moment. The courtroom grows quieter. The judge, it turns out, was tired too. On the days when even the sentence feels impossible, there is something else. A glass of water, drunk slowly. A shower you stand inside of longer than you thought you needed. A blanket pulled up to the chin. The act of feeding yourself something warm. These are metta too. Kindness is in the body before it is in the sentence. The practitioner who does this often enough begins to notice something the old texts describe. The fifth room does not have locks on its doors. The doors were never locked. What kept you inside was the habit of taking the voice to be your own thinking, rather than noticing it as weather. The moment you meet the voice with metta instead of agreement, the door becomes visible. The door has been there the whole time. For some minds, in some seasons, the voice in this room becomes louder than any single practice can reach. The old teachers, asked about such times, spoke plainly. They said a mind in severe pain needs companions. A sangha, a community, a guide who has walked the path. The modern equivalent is the therapist, the doctor, the trusted friend who will sit with you without trying to fix you. The path does not require you to walk the hardest parts alone. The fifth room is impermanent, like every other room on the wheel. The fire burns down. The creeper withers when it is refused. The fog thins when the one who is supposed to be watching finally does. The mountain of comfort eventually stops being a mountain. The private scoreboard empties itself when nobody is keeping score. 5 rooms, 5 conditions, all of them temporary. Above the fire, below the heavens, between the hungry and the hunted, 1 room remains. It is the one you are listening from. The old teachers said something strange about it. Of every billion births across every realm on the wheel, this is the one where awakening actually becomes possible. The reason is balance. The exact proportion of suffering and freedom in this room is the only ratio where waking up can actually take root. And the proportion is here, in this body, in this evening, in whatever you are feeling while these words reach you. A turtle swims in a vast ocean. The turtle is blind. It has been swimming for a very long time, and the ocean is larger than any ocean you have seen. It extends in every direction, with no shore and no bottom that the turtle can feel. Once every 100 years, the turtle rises to the surface to take a single breath of air. Then it descends again. On the surface of the ocean, floating somewhere at random, drifting with the currents, there is one wooden yoke. The yoke is small, a simple ring of wood with a single hole in it, just large enough for the turtle's head to pass through. The ocean is so vast that the yoke might be on one side of the world, and the turtle might rise on the other. Once every 100 years, the turtle surfaces. And the question the old teachers asked was this: what are the odds that, on one of those centennial breaths, the turtle will rise with its head passing cleanly through the hole in the yoke? Take your time with this image. The ocean is enormous. The turtle is one turtle. The yoke is one ring of wood, roughly the size of a dinner plate. The ocean does not care about the turtle. The wind pushes the yoke in directions the turtle cannot see, has never seen, would not recognize as relevant. 100 years pass. The turtle takes its breath and descends. 100 more years pass. The breath is taken, the descent begins again. Imagine the slowness of this. Imagine the patience of the turtle, who does not know it is part of a simile. The Buddha used this image to describe the rarity of being born as a human being. Shantideva, an 8th century monk who loved this simile, wrote about it to remind his readers what their lives were. Of all the forms of existence on the wheel, the gods in their soft light, the demigods in their private war, the animals in their fog, the hungry ghosts in their narrow throats, the beings in Naraka in their fire, the realm you have arrived into is the rarest. Why the human realm? Because of a precise balance the other realms lack. Consider what the Buddha pointed to. The Deva realm is too comfortable. The beings there have so much pleasure that they never look deeply enough to wonder why they suffer. They cannot see the whole wheel. The demigod realm is too competitive. the mind never rests long enough to turn inward. The animal realm is too foggy. Instinct covers the ground that awareness would need to walk. The hungry ghost realm is too hungry. The mind cannot stop reaching long enough to sit. And Naraka is too loud. The fire of reactivity drowns out every softer voice. Only in the human realm does a mind meet the conditions it needs. Enough suffering that the question arises at all. Enough freedom that the question can be looked at. The mixture is uncomfortable on purpose. Comfort would be the Deva realm, and comfort, for all its appeal, is a hiding place. The human condition you have been complaining about is the exact mixture the Buddha spent 40 years telling his students was irreplaceable. Most people, when they think about their life, think of it as one among many similar lives. A life among billions. A small, ordinary life, probably in the middle of a very large population. The Buddhist map says something different. Of the countless forms existence can take, almost none can practice the Dharma. Most cannot even form the question of suffering clearly enough to sit with it. The form you are currently inside is, statistically, a miracle. Sit with that for a moment. Whatever you were irritated about today, whatever stretched your patience, whatever made the evening feel like a burden, all of it is happening inside a condition so statistically unlikely that the old teachers reserved their most precise simile for it. The blind turtle surfaced, and the yoke was there. Consider the chain that carried you here tonight. Your parents had to meet, and the parents of your parents, and theirs before them, stretching back across centuries of improbable breakfasts and overheard sentences and shared umbrellas. If one of those breakfasts had gone differently somewhere in the 1700s, you would not be breathing tonight. A language had to survive. A teaching had to be written down, then rewritten, then translated across continents. A specific human being had to record the sentence you are currently listening to. The whole long improbable chain converged, and here you are, breathing, receiving it. In the Pali Canon, the Buddha listed 8 states in which it is difficult or impossible to practice the Dharma. Being born in a realm of acute pain where the mind cannot settle. Being born in a realm of acute pleasure where the mind does not bother. Being born as an animal, foggy. Being born in a place where no teaching of awakening has ever reached. Being born in a time when the teaching has been forgotten. Being born with mistaken views so deep the teaching cannot enter. Being born without the faculties required to receive instruction. And, perhaps most poignantly, being born at a moment when no awakened teacher is available to point the way. Listen to where you are in that list. You are in none of those 8. You are inside the human realm. You have access to language, which means you have access to teaching. You have faculties enough to receive an idea and turn it over. You are alive in a time when the Dharma has been preserved, translated, transmitted across centuries, and is being carried to you, right now, through an audio wire. This is, by any reasonable accounting, extraordinary. Let this land. You are in the rarest of the 6 rooms. The rarity has nothing to do with ease. Your life may be exhausting. Your body may hurt. Your bank account may be low and your inbox may be high. None of that changes what room you are in. The room is rare because of the shape of the window. The shape of the window is what makes awakening possible at all. The old teachers return to this image again and again. One of them said that having received this birth and having not yet used it for awakening is like someone who wanders into a treasury full of jewels and picks up the broom. The broom was never what the treasury was for. The broom, for most lives, is the whole point of the day. Get through it. Sweep the floor. Go to sleep. The old teachers said, gently and firmly, that it is possible to put the broom down for a moment and look around. Perhaps the strangest thing about this realm is what awakening looks like inside it. Awakening does not require a cave. A robe is optional. 20 years of silent retreat may help, and they may not. Many of the Buddha's own students awakened in very unlikely circumstances. Some awakened while hearing a single sentence on the road. Others while washing dishes. One while holding his dying child. The condition for awakening has always been the ordinary human condition, met with a specific quality of attention. Sometimes the recognition happens while you are drying a dish and the water is falling off the plate, and you notice, for the first time in months, that you are the one doing the drying. The kitchen stays a kitchen. The plate stays a plate. Something else has arrived. An attention that was not there a moment ago. The turtle, without meaning to, has just raised its head. Which means the teaching arrives at a very practical place. Do not wait for a better life to begin. The better life was never going to arrive. The life you have is the one the turtle surfaced into. The exhausted evening, the unfinished conversation with your mother, the job that still has 2 emails in it you have not yet answered, the body that aches in a place you are hoping will resolve on its own. This is the yoke, and your head is already through it. Now feel, quietly, what this does to the evening. The cup of tea you are holding is not a consolation for a smaller life you did not get. The cup of tea is the treasury. The lamp is the treasury. The body breathing through its tired evening is the treasury. Whatever you have been counting as the background of a more important life you were supposed to be having, this is the thing itself. Try this. Look up wherever you are. Whatever is in your field of vision right now, a ceiling, a window, the face of a person you know, the inside of an empty room, is being received by a mind in the rarest condition the wheel offers. No one in any other realm is receiving a view quite like this one. Dazzled, hungry, braced, foggy, climbing, the minds in the other rooms are busy in ways that keep the view from arriving. The room where this view is available, you have arrived in. It is the hand you were dealt. Perhaps something shifts while you are listening to this. A small reorganization happens in the chest. The day that seemed, an hour ago, mostly a series of failed attempts to be productive, begins to look different from a slightly different angle. The failing was happening inside a miracle. So was the productivity. So was the irritation, the long commute, the bad sleep, the way you did not quite finish what you meant to finish. The awe, when it arrives, is quieter than awe usually sounds. It feels like a softening, a slight relaxing of the grip with which you have been holding your own life, an opening of the hand around the day that has been in it. The day was always going to be this day. The grip was the only thing that was optional. You may find, in this softening, that some small weight you had been carrying begins to lift. The comparison you have been quietly making between your life and the one you thought you should have had starts to lose its force. This is the only life that was ever coming. However tired it has been, however ordinary, however full of unanswered texts and unfinished projects, it is the life 1,000 unlikely conditions delivered you into for a reason the old teachers called precious. The preciousness lies in the clarity of the window. Awareness in this room can reach what awareness in no other room can reach. Something else happens when the softening lands. The sense that you have been running late for something evaporates. The appointment was always this evening, in this body, listening to these words. You arrived on time for a meeting you did not know was scheduled. The meeting is with the human condition itself, and it has been waiting patiently to welcome you. One question follows from all of this, and the old teachers said it plainly. If this is the rarest birth, and if the door has been in the wall of this room the whole time, then how does a person walk through it? The Buddha's answer was brief. 4 truths. 8 steps. Underneath both, a single foundation stone. A thing so small that most spiritual traditions would not bother to name it, because it seems too modest to be what everything else rests on. The foundation stone is intention. Before the day has begun, before your feet are on the floor, before the kettle, before the coffee, there is a moment. The room is still dark. The body is still soft. The mind has not yet gathered itself into its usual architecture. In that moment, before anything has been decided, you have a choice. Most people are not aware they are making it. For years, they have been making it unconsciously, letting the mind settle in whichever direction the previous day left it. The choice is small. It is the choice of which direction to turn the morning. The Buddha had a name for this choice. The Pali word is cetana. It is usually translated as intention, though a truer sense is volition, the direction in which a mind leans before it acts. Most of what we call our actions are downstream of cetana. A person does not decide, in any deep way, to snap at their partner over breakfast. The mind was already leaning towards snap several moments earlier, while it was still drinking its first cup of coffee. The words came later. The direction came first. The old teachers gave a specific example of this. A person sits down to write a difficult email. They feel, in the chest, a tight and angry leaning. The hands begin to type. 3 sentences later, the email has become cruel. The same person, on another morning, sits down to write the same email, but with a different leaning in the chest. Patient, slightly sad, willing to see the other person's side. 3 sentences later, the email is honest, firm, and clear. The words are different because the leaning was different. The words were never really the question. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha made a statement that surprised many of his listeners. He said, "Kamma is what I call cetana." Kamma, intention, the 2 words, which most traditions of the time treated as separate, the Buddha insisted were the same thing. Your karma is not made by your actions. Your karma is made by the direction your mind was leaning when the actions happened. This rearranges what a person thinks they are responsible for. It moves the weight of a life from the outside to the inside. Here is what the teaching does. It places the door inside every single moment. Every breath is a chance. Every sentence. Every choice between replying now or replying after a pause. Every walk to the kitchen. The door has been in the wall of each of those moments the whole time. You simply did not know you could turn the handle. If karma is intention, then karma lives entirely in the present. It is the direction your mind is leaning right now, before the action, before the word, before the consequence. And the direction your mind is leaning can be adjusted. Tiny adjustments, made often in a single direction, bend the whole wheel. The Buddha organized the path into 4 truths. They are brief enough to say in a few sentences. Suffering is here. Something specific causes it. It can end. A way leads to that ending. Everything else in the Buddhist canon is commentary on those 4. You already know the first one. Suffering is here, in the body that has not quite slept enough, in the relationship that has not quite healed, in the shoulder that has begun to ache in the afternoons. You know the second one. Something specific causes it, which is the craving and the aversion and the fog the 6 rooms have mapped. The third is the surprising one. It can end. The sensation of living continues. Of course, but the dukkha inside the sensation can loosen, and then, over time, can end altogether. The 4th truth is, quietly, the rest of the video you have been listening to. The way has 8 parts. The old teachers pointed, with some humor, at how ordinary those 8 parts are. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Every one of these happens in the ordinary morning. They live in the kitchen, in the hallway between bedrooms, at the crosswalk, in the moment between reading a provocative email and deciding how to reply. Consider what each one looks like in practice. Right view is the willingness to see the wheel for what it is. To know that the argument you are about to rehearse in your head is the 2nd room. To know that the scroll you are reaching for is the 4th room. To know and to keep walking anyway, until walking becomes choosing. Right intention is the willingness to lean toward kindness before you know what you will say. Right speech is the sentence that comes out of that leaning. Right action is the body completing what the mind intended. Right livelihood is the quiet question of whether the way you make your money is consistent with the direction you want your mind to lean. A question to sit with over time. Right effort is gentle. Practice lives in the patient return of attention, thousands of times a day, to whatever is in front of it. Right mindfulness is what you learned in the third room, coming back. Right concentration is what happens to the mind when the coming back has been practiced long enough to become steady. You can practice any of these in one breath. Right intention. The next breath you take it with the clear understanding that kindness is your starting point. Right speech. The next sentence you are about to type, pause for 1 second before you type it and ask whether it increases kindness or erodes it. Right action. The next thing you are about to do with your hands, do it as if the doing matters. These are almost embarrassingly small. That is why they work. The wheel is turned by small things done often. Big gestures, done rarely change the weather of a mind. Think of it this way. A year from now, you will be somebody, a person with a certain nervous system, a certain capacity for patience, a certain quality of attention. That future person is being written right now by the setanar of this week, by the direction in which most mornings you have leaned. There is a verse at the opening of the Dhammapada that most practitioners meet early and spend the rest of their lives returning to. The mind is the forerunner of all things. What we think, we become. The verse is translated many ways, but its point is simple. What you practice, you grow into. The mind that has practiced kindness for 1 week leans more easily toward kindness in week 2. The mind that has practiced attention for 1 month arrives, in the 2nd month, already half attending without being asked. The path is accumulative. That is its mercy. You will not notice it happening. The changes inside a consistent practice are too gradual to perceive from inside. Other people may notice first. A colleague will say you seem calmer. A friend will comment that the phone calls go smoother. The person you live with may, one evening, say something about how you handled a small difficulty that used to rattle you, and the way they say it will make clear that something has shifted. You will be surprised. The shifts, to the mind doing the practicing, felt like nothing. To the people around you, they have been visible for weeks. Let the accumulation begin tomorrow. When you wake, before anything has started, take 1 breath that you notice. Let that be the first act of the day. Set, silently, a single direction for the morning. Not a plan, a leaning. May I lean toward kindness today. May I lean toward attention. May I lean toward honesty in the small sentences I will say to people in the next hour. That is the entire practice. The rest is staying with it when the day begins to pull. Then come the hours. An hour is long enough for the mind to forget what it leaned toward at dawn. The practice is the returning. Every time you remember, come back to the leaning. The coffee was going to be had anyway. The email was going to be replied to anyway. The question is only which direction your mind was facing while it happened. Then come the days. A day is long enough for the wheel to turn through all 6 rooms at least once. You will visit the 5th room in the afternoon. You will visit the 4th room at lunch. The 1st room may receive you, briefly, in a soft moment before bed. In each of them, the same small practice applies. Notice the room. Breathe once. Choose the direction of the next moment. This is the path the Buddha taught. 4 truths, 8 parts, 1 foundation stone. And underneath all of it, the quiet, almost invisible, entirely mundane fact that the door is always the next moment. The door has always been the next moment. The teaching has been delivered. What remains now is the rest after the teaching, the space that opens when the words stop and the body keeps breathing. The wheel, for one quiet stretch, turning more slowly than it was when you sat down. The body is still in the chair. The lamp is still on. The evening is still the evening. The person you were when this began is, in most ways, the same person still sitting here. Something small has moved. The mind came here looking for an answer. It may have found, instead, a way to sit with the question. Tomorrow the wheel will turn again, and the day after, and the week after that. The 6 rooms will open and close in their familiar order. The comfortable one at dawn, the foggy one at lunch, the hungry one in the afternoon. Each room will receive you for a time, and then, quietly, the next. The difference, from tonight onward, is that the rooms have names. A named room is a different kind of room. A named room has a door. Breathe once, if you would like to. Notice where you are. The chair under you, the air in the room, the small hum of the moment that is passing. The wheel has been turning for a very long time. Tonight, perhaps, it is turning a little more slowly.